I saw.
Tell Josh he's pretty. Ooh,
He's just a good boy who wanted his belly pat.
Oh.
I could start a cult. I really could.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, CM Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And I'm sorry, that was really aggressive.
Yeah, you were hyped.
And we are back with some madness of Marchness, where we find out how truly arbitrary our opinions are and suffer the consequences of our ill-thought-out arguments as we watch everything fall apart. I'm really getting the hang of the sports stuff.
You really are.
You might even say that my ball handling is on point.
Yes. You know what? I would say
Don't
that.
think about that one,
I
because I
won't.
just
Nope.
did.
You know, I won't.
You can't
I'm just going to encourage you.
puns with balls without knowing enough about sports to make them feel like a sport pun and not just...
You have to ask yourself first, what are the balls here?
The balls are... Okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore because I don't think I'm going to do a good job. Josh, I'm hoping that you'll guide us through this final episode of March Madness. That was cheap. You laughed real hard at that.
Because I was very happy about it. So let's handle our bracket balls.
Yeah, there
down
we go.
The alley.
The bracket balls. Thank you.
Yeah, we're breaking down the lane, and we're gonna slam dunk this episode into the finals.
Nice.
It isn't, and the fact that you don't know the difference is my
Sounds
favorite
good
thing
to me,
in the
man.
world.
I was like, wow, he's way better at puns than I am. I should have had Josh do this.
We are going to be going through the semifinals and the finals in this bracket. I'm very excited to find out the winner of our Stephen King catastrophe. How are you feeling? Are you hyped?
I'm scared because, like, I think this happens every time. I start off just like, yeah, whatever happens, happens. And sometimes I might get a little into, like, my pick.
Mm-hmm.
But usually it's amicable and we have so much fun talking about it that if I lose, I don't care.
That's the best part.
Yeah, but I feel like there are a couple, I'm like, if we don't land on this, what are we doing? Like, what kind of insane conversation happened during the course of this episode? It's an uncertain future.
It really is.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into these matchups. But before we travel down our first one, let's go through all of the matchups in the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
We have The Long Walk versus The Nuke in Las Vegas, The Arrowhead Project Collapse versus The Flooding in Derry, The Burning of the Shop versus The Invasion of the Phoners, and The City Center Massacre versus The Damnation of the Null. Without waiting any longer, let's go into that first matchup because I am really curious. These two I think are pretty tight for me coming into this conversation. We're going for The Long Walk versus The Nuke in Las Vegas. We have some different parameters for these quarterfinals questions because we have already recapped them and kind of put them head to head in that way. So we brainstormed some discussion questions because we're a book club. That's what we do. And I think that's the way we should approach these. We should approach these further rounds.
Yeah.
Let's dig deeper. So some areas I'd like to focus on in this first one, I think we'll jump right into how does King's writing style amplify the horror of each of these events?
Ooh, okay, buckle up, Josh. Oh, no, wait, that's a car. Oh, that's a car pun. Put on your jersey, your jockstrap.
Yep.
Okay.
Strap it on, Josh.
Strap it on. Damn it, that's so good. I was thinking about this a lot. Because King, obviously, he does what any good writer does. He gives the reader this character or characters, and then he creates this feeling of intimacy with them so that we're so invested in their journey, what's happening, their character arc, and what is ultimately going to happen to them, which usually is rough.
Yes.
Not good stuff. But what sets him apart, and one of the reasons that he is a master of horror, which listeners, if you don't know what that means, Google Masters of Horror, and you're welcome for the rabbit hole of entertainment that you're about to fall down. Anyway, one of the things that makes King stand out is not just his idea of taking the ordinary and setting that against, something awful, but like the simplest way that I think I can say it is that he goes there. He you're not guaranteed a happy ending even if you really like the characters or they're quote unquote like really good people. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're going to survive this.
Nick Andros.
Yeah. And you're not even guaranteed that he is going to avoid a scenario because of how truly awful it is. Like he will take
Oh,
us
yeah.
there, and he's probably even going to lean into it and force you to watch this unfold. And think of all the times that we heard him say like, "Oh, I wrote this thing." And then I'm like, "Holy shit, what is wrong with me? This can never see the light of day." But then Tabitha, his wife, thank you, Tabitha, for doing this, will be like, "No, man, Carrie is great."
Yeah.
So we've also got the Bachman aspect to his writing too, which really, I think, allowed him to lean into the cruelty of life a little more than he does with his other stories. And, thinking of like Thinner, I don't want to spoil this in case people haven't listened to it, but, he's our quote unquote protagonist. And the kick in the balls happens at the end. And you're just like, wow, I don't feel good having read this. But it was an engaging story. Nothing is safe, nothing is sacred when you're reading King.
Can I interject in regard to that division of style?
Mm-hmm.
I, in retrospect, am so grateful that we read The Dark Half before I ever read a Bachman book.
Yeah.
Because it gave me such a clear division of George Stark versus that. Like,
Yeah.
the insanity, the cruelty of George Stark is what I think about when I think of
Yes,
Bachman.
it's a framing device in a way for us to look at his two bodies of work.
It's so weird. I'm so weirdly grateful.
No, I think we either like indirectly discussed that or outright talked about that too on the Dark Half episodes, I think, or maybe the thinner ones.
I mean, we've carried it through a lot. The last fight night, we did have Team Bachman and Team King that were captained by Thad and George.
Listeners, watch our live stream fight nights if you're not doing it.
Yes.
So what I enjoy about King is that, you pull the covers over your head to hide from this terrible thing. And the monster in King books rips those covers off. And you learn it's a very hard lesson, a very harsh lesson. Like, oh, just because this person is good or just because I like them, the author is not going to spare me watching them die miserably.
Raider.
How did I forget about that dog trauma?
It's a very strong Stephen King moment.
Ooh,
He's just a good boy who wanted his belly pat.
Oh, but King lets us explore our fear too, though, in a way that is safe and I guess I wouldn't say comfortable because it's uncomfortable, but people who are drawn to horror, that's one of the things that we appreciate about it. And King and others like him are kind of like a weird sort of therapy.
This is insane. We've talked a lot about that horror fans are some of the most empathetic people in the world. And it is because of it that horror is a safe place to explore those fears. What's wrong with us that we as fans are like, yeah, I want to know what it feels like to be this devastated?
No, it's okay.
We search it out though a little bit.
You know what though? I would reframe us searching out horror and devastation as saying we are exploring our darkest fears and the darkest aspects of humanity because we are generally an empathetic bunch of people. And so you can't shut that empathy off because the topic is going to make you sad. Like,
true.
I wish you could.
True.
I'm not saying you can't or don't. I'm saying as someone with empathy, if you have too much of it, like most horror fans probably do, it's hard to like pull back from that and not just deplete yourself out entirely, caring so much about things that in some cases aren't even real because it's a book. And just think about some of this horrible shit that King has made us read. You mentioned the corkscrew. We have the dog in the fridge in It. Bev's dad.
Yeah.
The sewer scene, which wasn't, that was a different kind of thing. But also he went there. Like, what you're really writing about this and I'm reading it and I'm going to talk about it with other people. Sweet little Gage's death. How Lewis's grief causes him to make all of these disastrous choices. Annie Wilkes has a scrapbook of murders, a lot of those are babies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, King's writing style means that nothing is sacred, and that's horror, and that's effective.
What I think King's writing, the way it amplifies each of these, is very different because The Long Walk is a tone. It
Mhm.
is it's an oppression that you never get out from under, and there's never a sense you're going to. There's no hope in that
Mhm.
book ever. There's just resignation.
Yeah.
Resignation is the most hopeful thing that happens.
You feel a certain way reading it.
Right. And with the nuke in Las Vegas, it's a finale. It's an exclamation point.
Mhm.
So addressing the writing style of an ellipses versus an exclamation point, you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
know? And for me, I think that it gives the nuke a little bit of an edge here because while The Long Walk has us in a duration, it has
Mhm.
us in a mindset longer. Vegas is everything we've built up to for over 1,000 pages now. Very similar to how we feel in The Flooding of Derry because it's such a massive book. There's so much activity in it. And all of the things that come to a point at once, the public execution,
Mhm.
the final pleas to the crowd, basically the entire trip from the jail cell to the stage, setting the stage for the nuke's arrival.
Mhm.
And the excitement is there with the nuke. What do you think?
Wow,
How do you
okay.
compare these?
You make really good arguments for the nuke, but something you said
Mhm.
made me realize that I guess I would look at this from a slightly different perspective because, you kind of mentioned the idea of hope, right?
Mhm.
Because the long walk is a tone, it's oppression, and it is to me the long walk is what happens after Vegas. And
Okay.
Vegas is this horrible thing happened, but what is next? And it doesn't have to be the long walk. It could be a better society. But the long walk tells us, yeah, the culmination of this huge disaster is that we are now, and I know these two aren't related to each other, but
Sure.
we're now in
It's a
this
fun thought
dystopian,
experiment.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
now in this dystopian future where things are set. Like
Mhm.
this military totalitarian government is in charge of everything, and this isn't, I don't know, something about like a civil uprising to me, maybe it's our current times, seems a little more scary than what happened in Vegas. Not that I'm trying to say a nuke going off is not a huge deal, but it seems like it could be the start of something while the long walk has a hopeless finality to it.
Yeah.
Like this is the world and we've all given up.
It's not an ellipses, it's a period.
Yeah. Wow, you're really with like the grammar
Yeah.
references today.
I found a lane and I wanted to drive it. That's sports. Yeah, no, it is really the oppressiveness of it's a world similar to The Running Man, almost, where your lot in life is the die is cast. Before
Mhm.
you were even born, your lot in life was set in stone. And this feels like that kind of world
Yeah.
where it's just the authoritarian exist.
So since we each have one, what
Mhm.
if the tiebreaker, what if we talk about how each of these stories reflects real life events?
Oh, I love that.
And
Okay.
then whatever feels more like maybe that'll sway one of us.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I'll kick things off, Josh, since I've been thinking about this. You can
Sure.
have a minute to oh, I was trying to think of a cool sports pun for gathering your thoughts. So you can
Call a
gather your
timeout.
balls, your ball
So you
thoughts.
can call your ball boy to gather the balls. Yep.
Yep. Okay, so in the stand, we have this pandemic, and we get to see how that's handled by society, and we get to watch most people die horribly
Mhm.
and helplessly. Like, oh, couldn't things have been handled better potentially? I'm not projecting at all. And then we're left with this exploration of humankind's capacity for good or evil, you know, represented by these two groups. This is probably, for me, the most religious, like straight up kind
Oh
of
yeah.
religious of King's books. And, you know, it's supposed to be a happy ending that Vegas is taken down. But if you think about that, the hand of God thing has been criticized by some people as like lazy, but I think it really fits the themes
Oh yeah.
of the story like so well. You know, the biblical connection component. This is a vengeful God that we're dealing with here. And, you know, imagine you're not a Christian and you go to Las Vegas and, you know, you don't fit in with the Colorado crowd because they're very religious. I would not fit in with that. I would probably be going to Vegas.
Oh wait, are they super
Or no,
religious?
but
Like,
it's these okay, I watch too many like religious cult things about
it feels
people.
culty.
Yeah.
Got it.
Just in our modern times, there's
Because
that
you are
aspect
following
of
a
it.
religious God
Yes.
started
And so,
this.
you know, she's having Mother Abigail is
Sure,
having
yeah.
visions, and she
Mhm.
is written as someone like you would follow,
Oh
you would
yeah.
like to follow. I'm just projecting my own true crime fears on this. But what if you're not of the Christian faith? What if
Mhm.
you're of a different religion? You know, I'm not religious in general, but I think all religions are pretty valid. Like people can have the faith that they want and brings them comfort and gives them something to help guide their lives as long as they're not using it to oppress and hurt other
Right.
people.
It's not
That's cool.
it's not
Yeah.
valueless.
Yes. And so if that's not for you, you're gonna die and go to hell, and the devil who tricked you, he just gets to move on. And then in the end, like even the good, you know, quote unquote good people kind of like disband in a way, and a lot of
Mm.
them are moving on too. So even that society is not preserved for us, the reader. Like there are plenty of people left behind to continue on, but some of our characters who we've grown really close to are spreading out, and
And they
it's so
talk about
unsettling.
several people. I think I'd forgotten about that till you mentioned it. They do talk about there being clusters of people that spread out and just start kind of finding their own place in the world.
Yeah, which is, I don't know how to take that after sort of being in the space where you are picking a side.
Mhm.
Basically, if you're
Yeah.
not in Colorado and you're in Vegas, well, it's because you're bad, you know, and something bad is going to happen to you. And I like, you know, I said I'm not religious, but reading this didn't bother me because it wasn't preachy. It's more of like King framing the idea of good and evil in something that is just really, really prevalent in our society. So it's going to resonate with a lot of people in really specific ways. And I like that he uses that to explore this aspect of humanity and tell this interesting story.
And we will get into cosmic horror later on in this episode.
Mhm.
But I do like that the kind of use of God and devil, it's such an easy framework because we find out in the stand we are dealing with these forces that are outside of our reality and our comprehension.
Mhm.
And it's just the human mind can be like, God, that got it.
Yeah.
That
What about the long walk? We talked about like the Vietnam War connection with that
yeah.
before.
What the long walk does is the king, we talked about it, like you said, it's the Vietnam allegory. It's watching people his age get drafted
And teenagers volunteer
yes,
to
yeah, because it was something of there was pride to it.
Mhm.
They thought that there was something, they felt there was something worth fighting for. You know,
Mhm.
that's kind of the whole reason you sign up to do something.
Yeah.
And the the devastation is that I think we talked about this in the Long Walk episode also about how TV is the reason for the perception of the Vietnam War changing because
Mhm.
people at home got to kind of see it for the first time.
They got to see what war is.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not abstract.
Mhm.
And what King does is he brings the horror to a place you can't look away from. It is akin to I had a full separate other
Mhm.
discussion about this book with someone else, having the fun what if thought experiments of saying this book on another level
I
of the
can't believe
tower.
you would talk to someone else like that about this.
I got them
I
to
like,
read the
we're
book.
going to put a pin in that.
I got them to read the
and
book.
talk after the
And they
episode.
listen to the episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
You can still stay mad until they subscribe to Patreon.
Yes, if you're listening to this, whoever you are. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound so threatening.
Put the pressure, yeah. The what if of this book was the idea of, imagine these 100 bodies are stand-ins for 100 soldiers in active combat, and they are on a constant march here, but they are active in warfare there. What their physical state is, what's happening to them, shows up on these bodies. So as these people get injured, as they become famished, get diseases, people in the city start to see the marching brigade just kind of zombify and die before their eyes in a way that makes it all a reality. And that, because that's what I think the book does, is it was kind of King's way of saying, like, you wouldn't do this if you had to see it. The only way this would be is if you had to see it. And so I think that's my argument for how strong the real world impact is.
I love that, because I was thinking, I didn't even think about that, because I was thinking more of Ray Garrity at the end. We're left with this, like coming home from the war. A lot of people had PTSD or mental health damage done there, and not a lot of support for that.
Yeah.
And we don't know if Garrity, like, he wins, quote unquote, but we don't know if he survives winning or if he loses his mind at the end too.
I think I could be wrong. Didn't we discuss that was kind of a stand-in for quote unquote what shell shock, what they called it?
Yeah. So like his outcome for this thing he did is bleak no matter what.
Yeah.
And that, but I was so like thinking about that I didn't even think about all those other things. I gotta say, I'm gonna switch my answer to the long walk. Do you feel differently, or do you still feel?
I think the long walk.
You think so?
That's
Okay.
my vote.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, long walk is moving forward
Ooh.
over the nuke in Vegas. Our next matchup, we are going to be talking about the collapse of the Arrowhead Project versus the flood in Derry. And I'm going to go, I want to lead us off. Sorry, Sam, I keep putting the pressure on you in the opening for you to talk about either one. I want you to talk about the most impactful gut punch from each of these for you.
Okay. I love Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I love playing around with the idea of, the government's fucking with shit it shouldn't be fucking with. And, they bust open a thingy. And then we have, like, this terrestrial invasion, which is bad enough, but it's basically terraforming our own world into this nightmare giant bug creature place. And, it reflects that fear that citizens have of the government doing things and keeping secrets about them, and then us paying the price for that. And I guess the thing that is most gut punchy to me is this unrecognizable, like, alien ecosystem that the Earth is turning into, that is, it's going to change the way people need to live their lives, and which is a terrifying idea. But you don't just have, like, this huge grand scale thing that King writes in a way that is not too abstract. Like, you can sort of wrap your mind around, wow, yeah, I can kind of feel how horrible, like, that prospect would be.
Yeah.
So you kind of get a little bit scared of it.
Yeah.
Like, what if that really happened? And I love that. I love when it's realistic enough that you're like, oh no, someday that's going to really happen to us. But then we have Mrs. Carmody, who I imagine, like, you might have also thought of as the catalyst of a gut punch. And for me, again, it's a little more macro, the gut punch that she serves us, because she uses this event to manipulate very scared people. So we get to explore what horrific things that we will do to each other out of fear when we fall prey to a charismatic leader who tells us in these times of extreme distress that they can save us. And so despite the horror show happening outside, this, like, ecosystem change and these giant creatures, what people are doing to each other inside the store makes it safer out there. So we see our characters who these are characters that we're like invested in and we want them to be okay. We care about them. We see them decide, okay, we have to take this chance. And a lot of them pay for that freedom. And it's the monster in the grocery store, humankind is worse than the ones that are invading our planet.
You doing okay?
What? You asked me that so sincerely that I didn't know you were fucking with me for a second. And I was like, what did I say? Did I just go on and on too long? What did I do?
That was wonderful.
Okay.
I love that. I watched you go down the...
You watched the rabbit hole in despair.
I watched the trail happen. Oh my God, that was awesome.
Okay.
Okay, when you think of Mrs. Carmody, do you think book or movie? Knee jerk.
I think I picture her, so I think movie.
Yeah. I feel like I have a dissenting opinion ever since reading it, because I'd watched The Mist a ton because I loved it. I love being sad. But ever since reading it, I didn't get the witchy stuff from Mrs. Carmody that we get in the novella, because she like kind of runs an oddity shop. Like she's kind of a kooky, crazy lady, which for me makes it even scarier. Like in the movie, her being, she's the town religious lady. She's a nut job. It's an extra step if she's a kooky nut job that becomes
it's a hat on a hat.
Voice of God. Yeah, because you take her from being somebody who is dismissed to being ridiculed.
Well, the most important person in the room eventually.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like when the book version makes her more a joke.
Yeah.
Of the community, and that's what I like more about her rise to power, and what makes her extra horrifying every time I watch the movie now.
So they underestimated her.
Yeah.
And like she swoops in and does a lot of damage.
Because she's so confident.
Yeah.
I could start a cult. I really could.
I wish you'd quit saying that. Like, never say that to another human being ever again.
Good
Those words can die with me.
Yeah, no one but you will ever hear me say it. I said it with such confidence too. Are you a believer?
No.
Ah, damn it.
We just went over how afraid of cult leaders I am.
I had to try. It's the March Madness that got to us. Yeah. That's so your gut. I like that your gut punch is humanity.
Yeah.
Humanity exists, and that's kind of a bummer in the book, The Mist. That's my distillation
Josh,
of your argument.
I think that is what King has been writing about his whole life.
Wow. You might be right. The gut punch in The Flood of Derry. It's so interesting to me that you chose that, because there are so many more intimate gut punches. And I was worried when you were talking about the collapse of the Airhead Project that I wouldn't have something equivalent, because the flood is more macro as far as the tragedies. We get several deaths that happen during it, but they're not really people we're connected to.
Yeah.
Like one guy dies of a heart attack. Something breaks and gets pulled through their face.
It's more dairy building kind of spooky stuff rather than that character.
Right. And so the gut punch element isn't really there for this calamity in that moment. So what I think, where I want to take my gut punch is the gut punch of the flood comes from the mixed ending of the book. Because if you remember, the ending is essentially all the surviving losers go about their lives, except for Bill, who stays and brings his wife back from a catatonic state thanks to Silver. Great moment. And you get that idea that Bill Denbrough and his wife are there to stay, and there's a bit of that hopefulness. The destruction of the entire downtown leaves you with, what is the future of Derry. It's the
Mm.
same way we talked about the eruption of Castle Rock in the last episode. It is putting the end to this entire community,
Mhm.
and whether or not a town like Derry, the luck that Derry
Mm.
has, can it rebuild from such devastation, or will it become the shittiest part of Derry in the rebuilding?
Mm.
Did the flood of Derry, that was all of the new kind of, that was the
Kind of like we were talking about with
the
Las Vegas. Like,
yeah,
what's the
a
future
little bit,
after
yeah.
this event?
And so this is, we've wiped out all commerce. We've
Mhm.
wiped out everything but the bars in Derry.
Great.
And that's what Derry needs.
Yeah.
We wiped out everything but the
Mm.
gun store and the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Derry is. So the gut punch is in, yeah, we're free from it, but we're still not a safe place.
Which, and are we sure we're free from it?
No,
I mean, that also sucks.
I'm 1,000% sure
Mhm.
Pennywise is still alive. They cannot have crushed all those eggs in the dark.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Okay, so where would you say your vote would be?
I think between these two, the collapse of the Arrowhead Project is the devastation of an entire planet,
Mhm.
theoretically, as far as
Mhm.
we know. Yes, we are left with hope in that story.
Mhm.
We are left with a weird kind of hope in the book, or in the movie,
Right,
along
yeah.
with the devastation of the aftermath. But we get the fighting back
Yeah.
part of it. But we don't know. It's all,
Yeah.
as far as we know, the whole world is covered. That's what the characters tell us in their final note to the
Mhm.
world, is this could be everywhere.
Yeah.
Then what about you?
Wait, are you going with that one then?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh man, I was ready for an argument because you seemed so sure of Derry, and I was going to talk about, like this ancient entity poisoning a whole town. But you're right, like it is more of the scope of it, the
Mhm.
scale of it, and we're left with the uncertainty of the planet versus the uncertainty of this town that in theory would never actually affect us.
Yeah. And with the Arrowhead Project, we don't even know what happened to the poor bastards who were at the opening.
I mean, based on what we see happen to everybody else, I cannot imagine because our characters in the store they got a second
Yeah.
to sort of figure out something was happening and kind of try to acclimate themselves to that. I imagine the soldiers in the actual facility.
They didn't make it till dawn. We see it's in the morning when we see it coming across the lake.
Yeah.
They couldn't have survived more than 2 hours, like tops.
Both are about cosmic horror, but I don't know. I guess, yeah, just having it affect the entire planet's a little more like, ooh.
And you left the real personal gut punches on the table, because in that book serves them up
Mhm.
plenty.
Even the personal gut punch with the dairy, well, not with the flood, but with the book
Mhm.
would be, to me, kind of Bev and
Ben
Ben's.
leaving.
Yeah, in the whole like forgetting and stuff. I don't know.
Oh my god, I don't know if I ever told you this, because I talked a little bit about it, I think, when we did the podcast on the episode. But I had this idea, like going to like a music festival, and they just get separated from each other for too long and then forget about each other.
No.
Like, would you be afraid? What if I told you there's a chance if you get too far away from Devin, you'll forget him forever?
Oh, I would start wearing one of those lockets around my neck that has our pictures in it. So I'd be like, who's this cute guy? All right, I'm gonna go find him.
You both have "if lost, find" tags on everything you own.
I just wear a t-shirt every day with his face on it.
Holy shit, that's insane.
Easy solution. So Arrowhead moves on.
Yeah, Arrowhead's moving
Nice.
on. So we will
Cool.
find out whether the Long Walk or the Arrowhead Project will move on to our finals.
Kind of, again, pitting. I like how we're ending up with sort of intimate stories versus bigger ones. I don't know, I just like that.
It's funny because I think macro horror is such a great way to give you intimate storytelling because there's no
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
There's no easy out. Our next matchup is going to be the burning of the shop versus the invasion of the phoners. CM, I'm tossing it over to you to start us off again. Feel free to pick either topic. It doesn't have to be the one you plan on voting for either. So
Ooh.
I I decided to tell you that because I realized I'd never told you that before. That was allowed.
And I'm very rule governed, so I'm
Yeah.
just gonna
Well, reminding me that sometimes I will passionately argue for something I'm not choosing. I just like to debate these things. I love the
Well,
discussions
it's
we
fun
have.
to challenge yourself to explore the side of it that you're not on
Yeah.
to see, like, okay, how firm are my beliefs?
Yeah.
Because
And
the whole point of these episodes are that they mean nothing.
right.
Okay,
I didn't ask the question yet.
whatever.
That's not planned. So yeah, like I said, feel free to pick either one, but I'm going to ask you which event is more terrifying on a personal level.
Okay, I'm actually gonna go with the burning of the shop.
Okay.
So again, we have the shady government entity messing with stuff they shouldn't and causing unnecessary ruckus. But we're exploring this fear through another fear, two others actually, one being the nature versus nurture debate, the other being womanhood, and a third actually, I guess. 3 fears. Because then we have drug experiments where people don't have all of the facts about what they're volunteering for. So we have issues with informed consent and ethical violations. So I think the most obvious and direct one that would, if we're kind of like putting it in terms of scale, would be the drug aspect of that, the informed consent, because that reflects a lot of things that affect more of us rather than, someone's journey into womanhood and how much of what Charlie experienced, was biological, hereditary, internal versus what happened in her environment. And the answer to that is it's both. But
I think we asked this question at a Christmas once of
the Christmas episode.
Yeah. If you were injected in lot 6 with lot 6, what would your power be? Do you remember what your choice was?
I don't remember.
Give it any answer now.
Well, we'll just say to fly.
To fly.
Yeah.
Would you feel ethically violated?
No, if it worked out good for me. Yeah. If I said,
you said that and it jumped out to me. I was like, I don't know if I'd be hung up on the ethics if I did get the power of flight.
But usually with issues of informed consent and ethics violations, it never works out in favor for that person. That's why they're hiding shit.
In our history in the real world, it's never given me superpowers.
And I'm glad you bring up our history in the real world because we're exploring our fear about things that actually happened to us being, the royal us. So the Project MK Ultra, I won't talk about that because we talked about that the whole time.
Listen to the Firestarter episodes.
Yeah, Tuskegee, that public health service experiment that lasted, I didn't realize this, 40 years.
What?
That was from 1932 to 72, I believe. 30s to 70s. And
Jesus.
for anybody who's not familiar with this, it's a Black men were experimented on and treatment withheld from them so we could study how syphilis would kill them. And, I'm summing that up. There are a lot of other horrible things. That wasn't all of it. But, when I think of the long-term effects of this, and I'm not placing the blame for this solely on this, but I think it contributes. Thinking about people being resistant to COVID vaccines, for example, I think that there is actually a valid historical trauma here, a concern, and I could see why there would be groups of people who would be untrusting of this vaccine that we're all supposed to get. And I'm not talking about privileged white people, but there's that has happened. How can we trust that that's not going to happen again? How can we trust that it isn't happening now?
I recently had a conversation with an anti-vaxxer who had to get the COVID vaccine for their job. Yeah. And we were like, the conversation was like really lighthearted. And he was like, I never grew a hand out of my forehead, so that's fine. And I was like, that's the spirit, buddy.
Think of all the things you could do with a third hand.
In your forehead.
Yeah.
I'd give so many high fives.
With my head.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, when I think of the personal level, of the invasion of the phoners, it's because we equate it to a zombie story a lot
Mhm.
because it's an ordinary day that suddenly becomes an extraordinary day,
Mhm.
and it happens all over the world as far as we know at once.
Mhm.
It just this pulse, the signal starts it, and then from that point on, anybody who is exposed becomes one of these things. And tell me if you disagree. There's a weird comfort in zombie horror.
I think because our culture is so saturated with it,
Yes.
you feel like you understand it. It's
Yeah.
familiar, so it's comfortable. So yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I mean, there are real world doomsday preppers
And it's not
and stuff.
yeah.
And like, so it is stuff we are
And
exposed
it's not
to.
covert, like
And
it's right there in your
yeah,
face.
how many people do you know that have a zombie survival plan? You know, that's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
we all have that.
Or one's a joke about it, or like you can buy stuff at fun store like Ray Gun or whatever.
How many times have you been in a mall and been like, yeah, I could hold out here?
How many times have my mom and I talked about, okay, if the zombie apocalypse ever did happen,
We head to the arsenal.
we have our route that we would walk to each other because we live a couple miles apart.
That's
And there
right.
are different ways we could get to each other. I'm like, oh, I'll start walking towards you on this road. And then we'll make our way to Devin's parents.
It's
and like we had all
perfect.
these, yeah.
Cell strips that from you a chapter later.
Yeah.
And that is the rug pull for me. It could have been just another 28 days later by the mass chaos that we get in the opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
But the creatures evolve. They
Yeah.
become stronger. How quickly humanity goes from being the dominant species to developing the things like putting their shoes out in front of abandoned
Yeah.
homes to send a signal there are humans in here and
Mhm.
not phoners.
Yeah.
They develop all this as society collapses, and every time you think you have a handle on how you are going to be handling this epidemic, these monsters that humanity will have to fight back from and destroy to get their planet back, they become smarter and more powerful, and they enter your dreams, and they separate you from the rest of humanity by sending dreams to everyone saying, don't talk to these people.
They're basically doing the same thing, I just realized as you were describing this, that the humans are doing. They are setting up a new society and new rules to protect themselves ultimately.
Yeah. And they are effectively gods in the overall power while still being fragile human bodies.
I wish the king had written this book later than he did because I
Mhm.
think it's actually I think the technology aspect of when he wrote it makes it seem kind of silly and outdated when you're reading it now. In a way that kind of takes me out of the story a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
And I also can't remember if I'm just confusing the movie and book because I hate the movie so much that I have bad feelings about this story. But I think I have to backpedal on that a little bit because our phones are mini computers in our hands and like our whole lives are on them, our banking, it like everything. If you lose your phone,
You're
and
on
you're
it
someone
right
who
now.
uses it. Shh. See, I'm looking at my notes, listeners, by the way. But if you're someone who uses it like the typical person uses it, if you lost your phone, that'd be a big deal. But to have your phone turn on you and kind of change you to have this piece of technology that has really, like, if we're looking at tech from the standpoint of it opens doors and it gives you access to things, that might be otherwise like you wouldn't have access to, like privilege,
Yeah.
basically, and power. It gives you access to all that stuff. To have that turned against you, and then what you're left with is, we talked about it last episode or the one before, the camps, which we know never a good thing. And then the question of like, who is the real monster? Like we're now in this society that is evolving and we can't devolve. We have to move forward. And what's that going to look like?
And now to setting all that, the personal horror to me comes from the fact of, let's say this happened right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm away from my wife and daughter. I never know if I can't call them. I can't check to see if they're okay.
And I bet the first thing you would think to do
is call them and find out. And so I'd either drop right then and become a phoner, or I could the personal horror is that disconnect from everyone I love and never knowing
Hmm.
if they're alive or dead right now. Like, that's truly a terrifying thing
Yeah.
that every resource you rely on, basically, and as far as the technology
Hmm.
goes, could be used against you. And then it starts with that isolation, and then you start getting dreams of a being. You
Yeah.
know, it's the horror escalates so steadily, and I think that's what would I'd be so terrified for myself and then so
It's
overwhelmed.
like you adapt and you learn the rules, and
Hmm.
then you find out, oh, that was just like nothing.
Right, it happened. The movie
That was just a
version,
precursor.
the not like, if we do we talk about our spin-off stories
Hmm.
of if this story existed in King's World, like, imagine somebody a movie version of this where it happens, you have the person gets their whole gear up montage, they're going to go out and fight off these
Hmm.
creatures, and then that night they have the dream of the guy in the Harvard sweatshirt
Yeah.
commanding them. The game has changed.
Yeah. You're like,
The
well, I
plan you had
prepared
is
for
done. Yeah,
this. What?
that's
Yeah.
sharp right turn area.
All right, you want to vote on it?
Do you want to write them down, or you want to announce it?
Oh yeah, we didn't write them down
We
last
hadn't, right,
time.
because we've
Should we go back to being consistent, or keep with what we've already done on this
I'm
episode?
gonna go with the invasion of the phoners on this
Me
one.
too. Yeah. I felt like I had a pretty strong argument for the burning of the
Yeah.
shop, but you like really
the the personal horror. It's so funny. I can't relate to the horrors of womanhood. Only in that I love all of the women in my life, and I support the horrors you experience.
Oh, thank you.
I'm here. I'm an ally. You talked about in our first episodes, you always put yourself in the position of, could I survive this? And I don't. So with this question, I did.
Oh,
And so I
nice.
thought about what the terror of being in the shop must be like when this goes down. Cause, like, you're just at your job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not on the good guys team necessarily, but somebody works in the mailroom at
Mhm.
the shop who maybe doesn't know it. There might be oblivious employees. You don't know. You never
Mhm.
know in this secret world. And like, we get the way Charlie brutally murders some of them who are just like, I just work here, and she fireballs them.
Mhm.
And so that's the idea of going to work and being attacked is pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we
Alright,
have the
so
invasion of the phoners is moving on. Next, we're going to discuss what I'm interested to see how this conversation's going to go. Because this feels like a David and Goliath to me. It is the City Center Massacre versus the Damnation of the Null.
I would like to Okay, I want to frame my discussion around what you just said.
Perfect.
I have to do that though, starting with City Center Massacre.
Wonderful.
This was published a week after that guy stabbed 3 people to death in his apartment and then killed 3 more in a drive-by shooting. He was like running over pedestrians in his car,
What the
and then
fuck?
he shot himself. And of course, like Stephen King had already written this book.
Yeah,
It was like a
it's-
week, so it's a
yeah.
very short amount of time. But most recently, of course, and we talked about this on the other episode, we had the New Orleans attack.
Yep.
And then, in our history, we can look back to situations, our history, and it seems potentially our future is peppered with Columbines, Virginia Techs, the movie theater one. I can't remember where that was. Just all of these killing spree things. So Mr. Mercedes, the City Center Massacre is, I guess I'm going to go with gut punch here since we're kind of
Okay.
talking about that
Yeah.
too. The gut punch for me is we open on what is about to be a new family.
We shipped them so hard.
A mom and her baby and new stepdaddy who
On-
seems great.
On another level of the tower, Brady Hartsfield stole a Kia Sorrento and only made it through 2 people. And these guys lived happily ever after.
I don't want to laugh about that. 'Cause that's so, but yeah.
I felt you needed it, and I went there.
So we open with who we think we're going to spend this book with,
Mhm.
and then we see this very close to home thing happening. And I think,
Yeah.
we don't live in a huge city, but we live in a big enough city that shit has happened here. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a building collapse and a
Mhm.
lot of people died. That was not that long ago.
Mhm.
And we've had other horrible things happen. And so to read about something like that and to just place it so intimately, and then I I don't know, that to me is reality. So it's scary. It's something I
Mhm.
can wrap my mind around.
I am really excited for us to eventually get to the other Bill Hodges books. Like I said, I've talked about it again in the last episode that
Yeah.
each book you're still being touched by people who were affected by the massacre. That it
Hmm.
affects the span of this city because it's something like that affects a city for decades to come, and this city is no different.
And it's really dark because you could look at this as this event pulling this man from retirement, this man who was contemplating taking his life,
Mhm.
and it kind of reinvigorated him. But to not be so dark, you could also say that it gave him purpose because he wanted to do good and take down this horrible person.
Mhm.
But that's just a really dark thing to grapple with too. So like we lose who we thought we were going to be with, and then we get this protagonist who's broken,
Who has basically he's a
given
stone's
up.
throw from giving
Yeah.
up. You talked about the real world tragedies, but I don't know them offhand, but I know that if we weren't invaded by phoners and I had access to technology, I could look up the perpetrator of
Hmm.
those tragedies.
Can make it make sense in
Yeah.
your mind. Yeah.
Uh,
Give it a face.
ABC can make a mini series about it because it has a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, you
Like
can
it's a
investigate
clean
it. Yeah, and
story.
I think investigating things kind of makes them less scary.
Yes, you
That's why we love
discover
horror.
yeah, god damn. Yeah, we want all those details
Hmm.
when we ask how did this happen and someone says here's a 4-hour documentary telling you exactly how this happened.
Hmm.
Yum yum yum, serve it
Hmm.
up.
And it makes you think if you understand it, you can avoid it.
Yeah. They didn't get that here. Brady gets away
Hmm.
for years. This tragedy that took a desperate city and ran them down literally, got away with it. That
Hmm.
person is off. No one was there to cover those injuries. We in later books, it's not like a real like spoiler, but like there are like GoFundMe's for these people. Like
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
things, but these people don't have a way to get their lives back on track because it was all someone did it.
Hmm.
And that is extreme personal tragedy. No answers is so hard to grapple with.
It is. It sucks though, like because my brain can't help but I know we're talking about a disaster and an event
Yeah.
in the book, but I'm like,
Mhm.
and thank goodness,
Thank God it's
everything
over.
eventually, yeah, it's done.
But even then, at the end of the book, he's in a coma. He's not held accountable for his actions.
Yeah, you don't get that
No,
satisfaction.
they're at
Hmm.
no point. The most relief those victims can get is he's not hurting anyone
Yeah.
else. But he'll never know. That smug asshole will never understand that he's caught.
Where's Annie Wilkes when you need
Oh, Nurse Annie.
her? Okay, Josh, now you have the difficult task of talking about the absolute mind fuck King serves us with the null, the crusher of faith and spirituality.
It's the burden of knowledge. That is the truly devastating personal gut punch that this book serves you.
You can't unknow that.
Yeah,
And it changes you.
we have all been in a situation where someone told us a secret.
Like, I wish I could erase that.
Boy, I wish I didn't know that about whoever.
Yeah.
And you just live with it. You have a burden of knowledge.
It's a Dunning-Kruger effect. Just basically ignorance is bliss.
Oh, yeah,
We
absolutely.
tell ourselves that so we can be ignorant of things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Jamie is the person who has to live the rest of his life with this knowledge. The saving grace is he can only keep it to himself because who would believe him? and
Yeah.
what would telling anybody do?
Yeah.
It changes nothing. It is fate. It is destiny. It is damnation.
That poor therapist that I'd be
But-
going to because I couldn't tell anybody else, but I had to talk about this.
Now, we served up an idea and shot it down last episode. And it was about the idea that only people exposed to secret lightning would be affected because there are so many people who are already there. That doesn't mean that those people weren't also touched by something. Secret lightning isn't the only secret in the universe.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I've been playing a lot of Alan Wake.
Yeah.
And
oh, and that's kind of like that's in the King universe the way Castle Rock is. Well, not as extreme, but similar.
Yeah, the Remedy verse, they've really tied in the Alan Wake and Control games to very deeply tied them together. Tons of lore. It's very satisfying. We're going to be doing some live streams. We're going to do some playthroughs because it's just a really fun story to explore. So listeners, get excited. But it's the idea of in Control, there are all of these items that are impacted by they're touched by something else. In Alan Wake, it's things that are touched by the darkness that exists beneath Cauldron Lake. So it is anything affected by this is now tainted by it. So in a world like we take a micro Alan Wake where this story happens to Control, where Control addresses that the events of Alan Wake are just a thing that happened. Here's 100 different Stephen King universes where these different tragedies happened, and we're containing them all. And what if those thousands of things, anybody who experiences a supernatural
is changed
event
in that way
if you saw a ghost, you're going to the null.
I wonder what a world where we know that would be like. Like, how many, like what would happen with psychics? Like, how many people would claim to see ghosts and stuff? Whatever.
Ghost hiders. I'm a professional ghost hider. If your house is haunted,
immediately, of course, you make this into capitalism.
USA, USA.
Can
we film the pilot for Ghost Hiders?
Yes. It's a perfect name. I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Can I throw a gut punch in?
Please.
So we covered a revival so long ago, listeners.
Yes.
It was one of our earlier books that we picked, and it was a
underrated gem.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better. And so just kind of as a reminder, we're following Jamie. We're with him as a little kid at first when he meets Reverend Jacobs. And basically we spend the book discovering that it's almost like a mystery or this like detective kind of aspect to it. We're discovering this secret lightning thing. And for me, the gut punch of that is, that doesn't even fucking matter. because then we have the null. And like, yes, they're tied because that is one of those things you're talking about that changes you. But and that happens, like that comes at the end. So King isn't even like, and let's explore the null so that you can safely explore this and be comfortable. He's like, imagine the worst thing in the world ever. Here you go. Bye.
The beauty of it is that in that moment, they are getting exactly what they asked for. And there's something so rewarding when a character gets exactly what they asked for, and it's horrifying. Not when it's like a gin twist, when it's just horrifying. And it's about that scene for people who haven't read it. Spoilers. It's basically just about opening a door to see what's on the other side is what it becomes. We spent a lot of time thinking it was about his family that he loses. In reality, it's he's left that far behind him. It's just about this obsession of seeing the other side that way. And it kills him.
Yeah, and it's so effective too, though, to have it be so intimate and personal. And then give us this like mind-bending ending. That's my jams, I think.
And I think it's horrifying to think that the frivolous thing, like I said, just if you saw a ghost, you have been touched.
Well, and we talked about it
to go.
Last episode. The one guy got exposed to this because it was some dumb reason. Like something
it was Khan when he got hit in the throat. It like made him hock a loogie and he could speak again.
Yeah.
And that was the first test of it. So he didn't even think he had it right, but it gave him his voice back.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Can use that to scream in the null.
And the we didn't even discuss much about the personal tragedies of those who were affected by the secret lightning, who violently murdered their loved ones
Yeah,
in
and well,
a fugue.
it's like TBI.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
since
yeah.
this is March Madness, bringing it back to sports.
Yeah. Concussions.
I did it.
You did it. I'm
We
so
can
proud
end the
of you.
episode soon. But yeah, it is. So
Mhm.
again, that's another like close to home sort of personal aspect
Yeah.
of it. Something we can relate to.
Wow.
Shall we vote?
Yeah, man, I need a second. My hubris, I pay for it every so often.
Mhm.
And this is one of those moments because I announced this as a David and Goliath. And what you served up to me has given me a lot to mull about. I think I'm locked in.
Okay, me too.
Do you go first?
Sure, I'm gonna vote the null.
The null it is.
Oof.
Yeah, man.
Where did I sway you?
We're talking about the making sense of it,
Mhm.
putting a pin in it,
Yeah.
and I have the burden of knowledge
Mhm.
of knowing events after the city center massacre. So some of the things that you were talking about, you're talking about some things abstract, and I am able to attach them to characters we are
Yeah.
going to meet later.
Yeah.
And so that was really interesting for me, like, because we've talked around it so much, and I've told you about that aspect,
Yeah.
but you've kind of stumbled into a little bit of the vein of what we kind of explore
Hmm.
in the aftermath of the tragedy.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And it's by making it about the personal gut punch, the city center massacre just has so many more personal gut punches
Mhm.
to the characters that the ignorance is bliss. Those people have ignorance of, if those people are going to be sent to the null when they die and have survived the city center massacre,
They get to have a life.
don't tell them.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
tell them they're going.
Yes.
But it's that part of the argument
Yeah.
that makes it the null.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. No, I like that.
If you have to warn a tragedy about another tragedy, that other tragedy wins.
Fair enough.
We are into semifinal territory. CM, The Long Walk versus The Collapse of the Arrowhead Project. And I'll let you ask me a question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Serve me up.
Listeners, Josh just handed me a list of topics, and I love it. And it's so they're
And
all
it's-
so good. I'm like,
This is what the power feels like in my hands. Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Isn't it? You're glowing.
I am glowing. Okay. Which event haunts you after reading it?
Okay. We'll reframe it into what haunts me so that I don't show my hand as which way I'm leaning.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick one and just kind of go into it. What haunts me after reading The Long Walk is when what's his name rips his throat out
Yeah.
while screaming. I think about that scene a lot.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And it is truly it's a classic Stephen King moment in that book. And we talked earlier about seeing the horror on the face of it, and it is truly that's the section of the book where I remember reading it. We're getting towards the end, and the three of us were like, "There's a lot of people left.
Mhm.
There's too many people left for how much more of this book there is."
It tells you you're in store for a lot more.
Right.
Ugh.
And I don't remember if we talked about it, but if I recall, I thought we were going to get a run for it. I thought there was going to be a desperate, enough people were going to snap and try to like run it.
Sorry. No, you just made me realize it's like thinking about the entertainment aspect of it. That's probably what the people who live in that universe
Yeah.
are anticipating too, like this crazy final entertaining showdown and not this just devastating, soul-crushing stumble to the finish line.
You could bet on how many times they showed Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl in Vegas.
Mm.
The odds on a sporting event like that are so hyper specific imagine if the Long Walk is the only thing there is to bet on. The lines that I can't even imagine the side bets and the odds on things that they run.
That just puts it into such a, like, the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to imagine that, because you're talking about, like, we're talking about what haunts us. That's what haunts me.
Yeah.
Like the ending of this and just the implications of it. Like,
It's nothing special.
yeah. And that it just sucks at the end.
Yeah. We wanted so desperately for Garrity to be in the Long Walk where the revolution started.
Yeah.
We wanted it so bad. We wanted somebody from outside the book to come into this book and save us.
Yes.
So bad. And we never got it. We never get the reprieve. But the haunting part for me is the stretch that the last night before so many of them kind of succumb to madness and the start of leaving us with our final three. Yeah, I think about the devastation a lot.
I like that. I'm going to kind of talk about Arrowhead sort of pitted against that idea of, well, because it made me think about, I mean, there's so many things you could be haunted by in Arrowhead. And we kind of talked about more of the grand scale of those, just these monsters, and the descriptions of them are wildly upsetting. But when you were talking about the Long Walk, and I started to think about the Arrowhead stuff, I was like, because I was starting to feel like, wow, the Long Walk is even more devastating than I realized when we're putting this into these terms. But everybody wakes up the next morning and it's life as usual.
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
With Arrowhead, nope.
No. That's so interesting, because earlier we reflected so much about the my ellipses period analogy of this is just this year's Long Walk. It's nothing special. Next year will be another one, and another one the next. I don't remember if they said how many there have been.
No, I can't. We talked about this last time too. I don't know if
But it's been long enough that it's tradition that's not balked against.
Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah. Garrity's dad got what do they call it? Got secreted away.
Yeah.
Basically, by speaking up anywhere against it. So it's recent enough, but not too recent. I don't know.
And you see the failure of pushback and uprising. Yeah.
And so it's funny that you're right. They do get up and do it all again until next year, when 200 more boys get drawn and 100 thank their lucky stars that they were backups.
It's like you were saying earlier about the comfort in what is familiar, even if what is familiar is not good. We have that in the Long Walk. We do not have that in the Mist.
I mean, in the world of the Long Walk, is it safer to be a woman in the world of the Long Walk?
Based on what we know about it, well, no, because this is a volunteer thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's hard to explore, is that it is a volunteer, which leaves us to infer how difficult life is. The same way that we have to reflect on the Running Man. Why would you sign up for these games? Your life has to be in a place that's better.
Well, and not being as close to the Vietnam War as King and people who read this when it came out we're understanding it in kind of different terms, like acknowledging that, but I cannot relate that to the Vietnam War, obviously. Yeah. So that's kind of scary too, because we have to make meaning of it in otherwise fine lives. So it does become even more personal, like, oh, this is more of a, like, what's going on in your life? Like, what kind of life are you living every day that this seems like a good idea?
I think I'm ready to share my vote.
Me too. Go. You want to go?
I think extinction wins. I think the collapse of the Arrowhead Project, for as we hang on to the hope stuff, I think the human race is done. I think in that version of the world, the planet now belongs to these creatures. Yeah. And that's just the way it is.
Belongs to the Mist.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm gonna take the extinction level event, the collapse of the Arrowhead Project.
I am too.
All right, we have it moving forward. So our next semifinal matchup, the Invasion of the Phoners versus the Damnation of the Null. This is a bit more difficult, I think.
It is. And partially because of how much more attached I've become to Cell in this episode that we're recording today than I was before.
It's weird how that happens sometimes.
I know. I don't know if I love it or hate it.
I'm going to read it again.
I want to. I will never watch the movie again,
No,
except under
unless it's
very
Patreon.
specific circumstances. Yeah.
$100.
Unless
You'll
I
make
get
us do
paid
it.
too. Okay, because this is a hard one. Wait, this is Null and Cell.
Yeah.
Man, I hate this. Okay, I think the only question is, which of these two events changed the horror genre more?
Ooh, I wrote that question. It's such a good one.
Okay. I already said these were your questions. You didn't have to. Everybody tell Josh he's pretty.
I saw the opportunity and I wanted to take it.
Well, we don't expect anything else.
For me, I'm gonna... Okay. All right. The invasion of the phoners, I really just jerked off for subverting expectations, because it absolutely did. It gave me zombie genre, and then it was not that at all. It was that for one chapter. And I think that we've seen King explore well-tread areas. We have alien invasions. We have vampires. We have werewolves. We've got all the classics. He does them all. And to make the phoners something different, because it wasn't like anything else I think I've seen in or read in recent horror, of a hive mind becoming a person. Like a hive mind that becomes a community in a way. Like, because it's not, yes, the Harvard sweatshirt is the avatar that is used to speak, but truly we don't know how the hive operates. But we do get hints that it's kind of a new civilization. And I think that was the most genre changing for me.
Okay. That is a really good point. It did make me think of, like, this is King taking the Borg from Star Trek and the creatures from I Am Legend, which is Richard Matheson.
Oh, yeah.
And it's sort of that, like, because I guess Cell that twist wasn't as gut punching for me on a, like, genre level. It was for the story because I didn't expect it. And I loved playing with that idea because it's really a fun idea. But I got the way you felt about that was how I felt when I read I Am Legend.
I see that.
But
I Am Legend is so good. What
I Am Legend did that was really cool that we don't get from Cell, which is not a criticism. It's just the way that King told this story works best for that story. And I Am Legend already did this. But the Null does this, where you hold on to that false belief, to the trick that has been played on you by the author until the very end. So you don't even have, once again, to me, I think it goes back to comfort. You don't even have the comfort of being able to explore this idea and safety, or even really acclimate yourself to this. It's like you have to close the book and think about everything I thought I knew was wrong, and now this paints everything in this different light for me. So I guess I'm accidentally talking about the Null stuff, but I liked your argument, so I wanted to pull it.
Imagine how much that reveal would have changed if it's a few chapters earlier, because Jacobs is referred to as his fifth business. He comes in and out of Jamie's life a bunch through the span of this book. The time when he goes, we made a big deal about when Jamie goes to visit him in his mansion and he has the book that's in Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Like, he's got like some of that literature. If in that conversation, Charles Jacobs had said anything about the Null, if he'd said the name the Null or any description, how much it would have taken away from that major reveal.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The rug pull is so important to that.
And it's a risky move, too, because of the world.
And it backfired, according to some reviewers.
I
nailed
disagree,
it for us,
But I mean, you've built all of this up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to do that. Like, I think, I don't know. I admire that risk. Like, I wish, like, I wanted to do Revisited on Revival.
Yes.
Well, because Revival's one we had never read, any of us, I think. I think it was, might have been one of the first ones none of us had ever read. And so I haven't been able to read it more than once.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
I have my vote locked in.
you want to go first?
I'm going to go with Null.
The null. The
Yeah.
null advances. So we have in our
This
finals
Sucks. What you're about to say.
the collapse of the Arrowhead Project versus the damnation of the null. Extinction versus damnation, which is worse?
I thought that we were going to, I really thought we were going to get here with, I figured it'd either be the Null or the Mist pitted against a more intimate, personal.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought we were going to be pitting those things. And now I'm like, geez, we just kind of like, I guess everybody knows what we find truly horrifying, which is more of this sort of cosmic horror. Oh my God. We've been talking for
It's such a long episode.
These are the longest.
You prepped.
I know. I feel like a piece
got
of
us so
shit
into
now.
it.
I
No,
feel
it's
like I've really
great.
been dropping the ball for years.
Well, you didn't need to
didn't
play
need-
with
yeah.
my ball because you
Okay,
had a ball and Eve had a ball, and so each of
Now
you
I have
bounced
to
out. Now
keep
you have to
this
play with my
in.
balls.
It sucks because I am the one who created the balls metaphor,
Oh, I love you.
and I really thought I was making a sports joke. This is why I don't watch sports, because it just ends in disaster.
Okay, our final question. Either one of these, whichever one you want to start with, how is the tragedy impacted on a reread? I mean, I know we haven't. Revival's at a slant because we haven't reread it.
Yeah, and I've read The Mist.
But how does now that we have the tragedy spoiled for us, we know it's coming, how does that color?
Oh no. Oh, I hate to say this, but part of what makes the Null possibly so horrifying to me personally is what I just said, basically, to argue for it winning that last round, which is that you don't get the comfort of exploring that. I imagine if I were to reread Revival now, it would be a very different experience knowing what I know. And I think it would still be a very good one. And who knows, it might be, I can't say, it might be even more horrifying to walk in with this knowledge and watch it unfold for our characters and probably paint a lot of what Jacobs and what Jamie do and the conversations they have in a different light. But since we do get to see enough of what happens with the Arrowhead Project in The Mist, we can extrapolate that. Like, we have a lot of questions answered.
Because that really tackles it based on inciting incident versus reveal. It really puts us. We are with
the Mist is at the start and the Null is at the end.
I mean, has knowing that the Mist is cause of a government experiment ever changed the impact for you?
No.
I find that null and void.
Nice. Nice.
So that's maybe that's not a great question. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna switch it up. Actually, if you had to explain what bothers you about the collapse of the Arrowhead Project to somebody who's never read or seen it, or read King at all, non-King fan, and you're like, I need to explain to you. They're like, what's the most devastating thing you've ever read? Well,
oh my God, that makes a complete opposite argument. I don't know if that's going to help either. Well, because I mean, truly, if I'm looking at both of these things and these events, and horrifying things happen in both of them, but at the end of the day, what terrifies me the most about these worlds is the Null.
Yeah.
It's so, I can't even think of a scenario that could top that for what I personally find my brain wants to stop thinking about it. It's one of those things that are so huge and so it's cosmic. Cosmic horror is very, very upsetting in a way that I think I mentioned this before with the Arrowhead Project. I did take some comfort in knowing that these were animals for all intents and purposes. Like, to us, we see them as like creatures or monsters, but they're just minding their own business.
They're an
And
ecosystem.
they don't know that we have feelings and don't want to die. They're just having dinner.
Oh, gross.
But they're not enslaving us
Mhm.
and screaming from the sky with their star mouths.
That's true.
And that's upsetting to me.
That's a courtesy.
I don't know. What thoughts do you have on these?
I think that I'm very curious to experience the Null on a second read
Mhm.
to see if there are any. I know there's not going to be like clues because Eve had read Revival before, as I
Oh,
remember,
she
because
did.
because she was
Okay. I
keeping
forgot
the
about
secret
that.
about secret lightning
Oh, I thought that
a
was
secret.
okay.
um,
But I don't.
and
Do
we
you
explored that that's
yeah.
all you get is that it is, and that's done. So I don't think
Mhm.
I'm going to explore a new connection the same way I'm not going to really explore anything new about the Arrowhead project
Mhm.
in another read of The Mist. But I think when it comes down to explaining what bothers me to somebody who's not a King fan, I would say that the collapse of the Arrowhead project is survival horror,
Mhm.
and the damnation of the Null is you thought you were watching an A&E biography
Hmm.
and then it fell into Lovecraft. It is the unease. It is the part of the point is that it doesn't matter.
The way you described that gave me another thought
Mhm.
too. You know, you called the mist more of the survival thing. Kind of comes back to hope because potentially you could survive that. It would be hard and it would not be fun.
As
Don't
long
get
as
me
you
wrong.
can hold hope.
Yeah, but if so it made me think of this when you said that. It made me think, okay, if I was going to reread both of these and I would potentially reread them if we're exploring horror for comfort, like that's kind of been the theme of this episode on accident.
Yeah.
I would reread these to try to regain some security and comfort in what I know to be true about the world. And I may achieve that through hope and survival with the mist, and I am just fucked with the null.
I think it's time for our final vote.
Okay.
Damnation of the Null.
Null.
The
Yep.
Null takes it. Congratulations to the Null on being 2025's winner of March Madness. You really did it, girl.
I had a pun that I was going to use for this, but we just got so excited. We voted too quick. I'm going to throw it in now.
Get
though,
it, yeah.
Because that's what makes puns fun.
Yep. The scripted nature
The
of them.
untimeliness of them. We better choose wisely or we're courting disaster.
Why?
What?
Courting disaster. That's very good.
Well, this is about
That's-
disasters.
You're right. You're right.
I had to serve
like
this
that a
one
lot.
up because of the thought that I put into it when I saw it on the internet.
It's a beautiful pun.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not going to read my other puns.
If I hear your puns, it means I go to the Null.
Wow.
You've touched all of our listeners and doomed them all.
Oh, you guys. Now we share something. We're like connected. And that is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode where we will be covering another story from Everything's Eventual Lucky Quarter. For Joshua Kahn, I'm CM Alexander, reminding you of a March Madness closer pun.
That's
Should have
that was
reminded
a strong
myself.
bailout. It was really